Okay, so let's discuss business use of social media. Businesses are really interested in social media as a tool for helping them make money since they're motivated by profit. How do we measure success? Well, traditionally, it's done by measuring return on investment. And the simplest way to compute that is the income that you make from a particular action minus the cost of that action divided by the cost. So if I undertake a social media advertising effort and I spend $100 and I make $200, the return on investment is $200 of income minus the $100 cost. So that's $100 total divided by the cost, which is $100. So I have a 100% return on investment. If I made $1,000, I would do $1,000 income minus the $100 cost, which is $900, divided by the $100 on the bottom, which gives me a 9 times return on investment, or a 900% return on investment. There's a bigger example down here if you're interested. This is hard to do in social media, though, since calculating income is often really tricky. If you're doing a straight up advertising campaign, you could follow the number of clicks on your ads and see what people buy. But in general, maintaining a Twitter account or a Facebook presence isn't something that clearly and directly leads towards profits. So measuring return on investment is hard, and that's why a lot of companies have a hard time doing social media. They don't know how to measure what's going on. They're not putting in the right amount of investment. So they turn to other measures to try to see the effectiveness of their social media activities. Traditional measures include things like counting. What are the number of views, the number of followers, the number of hits, getting some sort of quantitative measure of the number of people or the amount of engagement that you're getting. Social sharing is another. How many times are your posts shared? How many people are passing them on? How many times are they emailed? The engagement rate is what percentage of people who come to your social media page, for example, are engaging in some way. So it could be playing a game, clicking a link, sharing something with their friends. Interaction is actually getting people to interact. So if you think about something like Twitter, that could measure how many people are getting in touch with your customer service representatives on Twitter or are sending you product suggestions. If you have a contest, how many people enter? What's the interaction that you get? Referral rates are rates of referring people to come to your social media site. So those could be, say, invitations on Facebook for somebody to like a page or to join and get engaged. And then finally, the influence of users. Having lots of people get engaged with you on social media is nice, but actually getting more influential people engaged with you can be even better. And so you may take a smaller number of people who are engaged if you can get more influential people engaged. So here's an example. What we have here is a network that's made from a restaurant in Arlington, Virginia. This is looking at the structure of their Twitter account. Lighter nodes have higher influence. So is this a sufficient way to measure success? Well, we can see that there's kind of two separate groups here. We've got a few nodes with high influence in this group here, and in fact, they're all clustered together. This group is a little bit tighter overall, but they have people with lower influence. The groups that we see here actually play out in an interesting way. This restaurant is across the street from the ice rink where the Washington Capitals, the DC NHL team, practices. So the group over here tend to be mostly fans of the Washington Capitals who will go over there after a game or to watch a game or after watching practice. And these very influential nodes in the middle are players on the Washington Capitals who will go to the restaurant after practice and tweet about it. The group on the right is generally a group of businesses and people who are talking about Arlington, Virginia, and the businesses there. So they're grouped pretty well together because they all follow each other and interact. But it makes up a very different group of people who visit this restaurant and know about it than the Washington Capitals fans over here. But what does this tell us about success? Does this restaurant have a successful social media campaign? it's hard to tell just by looking at the graph structure here or who the influential users are. It turns out that looking at this restaurant shows that they do actually a pretty good job on Twitter. They tweet out menus, they're very interactive. When people say nice things about them, they'll often send them a tweet telling them to have a free drink and who to ask for it. So they do a great job engaging with people and having people want to interact with them on Twitter, but you can't really tell that from the structure. And in fact, the influential people don't give you a lot of insight there. It's something that you have to go in and just look at the content of the tweets to understand how effective they're being. Let's talk about some success stories on social media, though. One of my favorites of these is the Will It Blend video campaign, and we're going to watch a couple of these. The idea was started by this company, Blend Tech, and they make really high-power, professional-grade blenders. You can buy a cheap blender, say at CVS, for $15, $20. A BlendTech blender is a few $100s. And they weren't getting people to buy their blenders, even though they knew there was a market out there for people who wanted really high quality blenders to use in their house. So they got the idea that they would show how good their blenders are by blending weird stuff. And they just posted these videos up on YouTube. And after beginning the campaign, they saw a 700% increase in sales. And they didn't do anything to draw people to these videos. They simply posted them, and through viral sharing, people posting these awesome videos to show to their friends, more and more people got interested, started subscribing to the channel, and ultimately started buying the blenders. So let's watch a couple and then we'll come back and discuss why they're useful.
Will it blend? That is the question. Now we're going to do something kind of unique here. Here I have a dozen light sticks, and these are break and shake light sticks that last for 12 hours. Now it says on the instructions, do not puncture, cut, or bite into light stick. Now it doesn't say don't blend the light stick. Let's turn the lights off for effect. That is a 12-hour lantern. Don't drink this. Will it blend? That is the question. I love my new iPhone. It does everything. But will it blend? That is the question. Let's find out. I think I'm going to push the smoothie button. I smoke. Don't breathe this. Now, you fans on YouTube have asked me to blend an iPhone, so I did it. But I have another. I'm going to put this on eBay.
Okay, so having watched those videos, why do we think that this is successful? Because lots of companies put videos online, but this company has had particularly good success. So why are these videos good? Well, they're edgy, they're funny, they're interesting, but also they clearly make a point about the product. And they're worth sharing because the content is good. They're not begging people to share. It's simply really interesting to see someone blend weird stuff. The videos are always kind of dramatic visually, and they happen to show that the blender is really good. So people share because of the content, but the content is designed both to be shareable and to make a point about the product that it's selling. So it's a great example of using social media to get a really obvious return on investment. Another success story is Zappos customer service. They have a particular Twitter account that they use for this, and people can tweet them if they're having problems with an order. It's really an alternative to phone support. And one study that was looking at how businesses do in terms of customer service on social media showed that every single customer who tweeted to them got a response within 24 hours. And they don't respond from this account, so there's some privacy. They actually have separate accounts for individual customer service members to use to respond to people who tweeted this main account. So you don't have to worry about sharing all sorts of details about your order in a way that people can see them. Those people send messages from accounts that aren't easily publicly viewable and help people get their issues solved. So people who have studied using social media for customer service have shown that Zappo does a good job. If you do a search on Twitter for this account, Zappo's service, you'll see the kind of questions that people are asking. It's worth thinking about why you think people might go to social media with these requests rather than calling. One example is that your complaint becomes a little bit more public. So it's not just you calling some uninterested person on another line, you're telling all of your friends that you're having a problem with Zappos. And for Zappos, they really treat this as an opportunity for you to follow up with your friends saying how great the experience was and that Zappos helped you solve your problem. So take a look at Zappos and the kinds of responses that you see them getting from people and them sending to people, and think about why this is a really effective use of social media for customer service. But we can't just do success stories. We're going to do at least one example of a failure. So if you remember in the summer of 2012, when the new Batman movie came out in Aurora, Colorado, there was a midnight showing and a mass shooting in the theater. Someone just killing people, brought a lot of guns in. And this was the big story the following morning. It happened late at night. And so waking up, this was the main story in the news. And this online clothing retailer called Celeb Boutique put out this tweet that said, "Aurora is trending clearly about our Kim K inspired Aurora dress with a winky face." Aurora was trending because of this mass shooting in the theater. And this is not a very tasteful tweet to be making by promoting a product based on a trending tweet about a really serious tragedy. So there's kind of two options. One, if this is automated, if they have some system that just looks for tweets that happen to match the name of their products and sends out predetermined tweets based on that, it's a big mistake, and anyone managing a social media account should know better. Just because something is mentioned doesn't mean you should associate your product with it, and this is a very clear example of why that's true. If it was an intentional joke, and the consensus seemed to be that it was intentional because of that winky face at the end, someone thought it would just be a kind of lighthearted way to talk about their product, it's incredibly insensitive, and there was a huge backlash as a result of this to this company for weeks and weeks after the shooting because of their social media response to this. Interestingly, for exactly the same event, the NRA's Twitter account also had an issue. They had pre-scheduled tweets, which is a common strategy they use. They write tweets about particular issues or just to engage their followers. And there was a tweet that came out just talking kind of jovially about guns that was posted that morning that people thought was really insensitive. It was something that had been scheduled to be posted days before, and no one had thought to go through and look overnight at the tweets that would automatically come out. And the NRA responded by shutting down all their tweeting behavior altogether to reevaluate this policy. This company, on the other hand, didn't really have that kind of response. And even though they were having this huge backlash, they put out a sort of half-hearted apology and kept going on with their normal business. So it's an example of a real failure, whether intentional or not, of how social media is used by some companies. So conclusions to draw from this. It's hard to measure the impact of social media campaigns in most cases because return on investment, which is the traditional way of looking at this, is just hard to judge because you don't know what your return is from social media. But successes can happen, and they generally happen when companies do things that are interesting or helpful to customers, that show them in a good light, and that has good content and also does good things for the business. None of that should really be new advice for companies. It should kind of be the same way that they're using traditional media, but adding in the bonus of interactivity that you can get in social media. So as an exercise, again, not that you have to turn in, but just something for you to think about yourself, is to take a brand that you use regularly and then try to find all of their social media preferences. So Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, probably other places. And look at things like how often does the company interact on their social networking site? Is it many times a day, many times a week, never? There are one or two postings and it's mostly been abandoned. And what kind of interaction are they doing? So if you think back to the public media, the public sector use of social media, we talked about broadcast, request for input, or direct interaction and communication. The same kind of analysis can be used for understanding businesses. So which kind of interaction are they doing, or is it a combination of those? And think about an example of each one. And this will help you start thinking about if this company is actually doing a good job with social media, or if it's become kind of a default presence that they feel like they have to have, but they're not leveraging in a really effective way.